Hello again. We are continuing to look at Luke chapter 12, where Jesus speaks about the issues of fear, worry, and anxiety, something that I think is on the forefront of many people's minds right now. And we backed up a little bit to look at a parable that Jesus told. It's commonly called the parable of the rich fool. And we're not going to dive right into that now. I did a couple of videos just to kind of ease us into it. But before we dig into the parable itself, I just want to stop for a moment and ask you a question. The question is, do you think it's possible that God is reaching in to our world right now, graciously and mercifully, and he's shaking the things that we feel like are stable, the things that we build our lives on, the foundations that we're standing on that give us a sense of security and hope? You think it's possible that he's reaching in and shaking those things in order to tell us through all this that's going on right now, to tell us you can't build your life on those things. You can't depend on things, possessions, money, security in your job, and all these various different things to really ultimately build your life on and stand on and know that you're safe and secure. I think it's very possible. I don't want to presume that I know exactly what God is doing and I can read his providence, but I can read his Bible, I can read his word, and I see him do that in the word. We'll talk more about that in a while, but just to kind of prepare us to look at this parable, I want to tell you a story. I used to be a carpenter, and I was a rough carpenter, and I would work on homes, huge custom homes sometimes. And I remember one time we were working on a very big home. It was a huge custom home somewhere, and it had essentially like 4 stories because it had a full walkout basement. It had 2 regular levels or stories that were 10-foot high ceilings, and then it had a huge attic because it had a very steep pitch and a high gable. And I remember us having to side that side of the house once, and it wasn't just that it was really high, it was also on a hill, and so when you got to ground level, it sloped away from the house, and I don't think I was ever that high in my life on a job before. And so we built a scaffolding, and we built it piece by piece, and as we went up, we just kind of threw it together. This would not pass OSHA at all. It started out pretty solid, but then we were just using anything we had just to make it up this high. And so we had planks and boards, and we were, attaching them to the house. And as it went up, it got closer and closer and closer to the house, so that you were just really tight up against the house by the time we got up to the peak. And it was also shaky. It was kind of scary. And I remember getting all the way to the top, and I was putting in the last few pieces. And, the wind was blowing, and every time I would move, it would just feel like this thing would just kind of waver, and it was shaky. And I don't ever remember being this scared working in my life. I mean, I've been up in heights before, and it didn't bother me. But for the first time, as I looked down, and I would, basically 4 stories, and then the ground sloping away, it just seemed so high, and it didn't seem safe to me, and I was really scared. And I got to the point where I put the last piece on, and I said, I don't want to climb down on this thing. So I actually climbed up on the roof and found a different way to get down. And when I think about that what happened to me, what was going on was that I realized that I was depending on something that I built myself. I was putting my life, resting my life, my very life physically, literally, on something that I had constructed myself. And when I got all the way to the top and I began to feel it shake, I didn't feel safe at all. And it really pictures to me what God does through difficult circumstances. This is unprecedented. There's nobody that I know that I can talk to knows of anything quite like this. It's worldwide. And when I read my Bible, I see God mercifully, graciously. He's not being mean. He's getting our attention. He's shaking the things that we stand on because he wants us to build our lives on something more solid. He doesn't want us to live in the fear of what's coming and the uncertainties. And so here's what I would like you to do. I'd like you to consider that as we prepare to move into this parable and talk about it. And you tell me if you think that that's what Jesus is doing. He's warning us not to build our lives on things that are shaky, but to build them on God alone. And the second thing I'd like you to do, if you're watching this, is to tune in tomorrow. We live stream our worship service, and we're going to be talking about the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And I assure you, there's nothing more solid, nothing more steady to build your life on than the life and the death and the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Thank you.